Blood isn't supposed to look that purple. It bloomed under concealer on my sister's cheek like a rotten flower under the fluorescent lights of the visiting room. Her blouse was buttoned to her throat in the middle of a heat wave, her hands shaking as she set a Tupperware of cut-up oranges on the table. When she reached for one, her sleeve rode up, and I saw the rest. Yellow fingerprints, belt lines, bruises stacked on bruises. Something inside me, the part the meds never killed, sat straight up. My name is Mara Quinlan. I am 28 years old, and when I was 16, I was locked in a state hospital for breaking a boy's arm to save my sister. But what they didn't know was I never stopped being dangerous. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because what happened next wasn't a normal reunion between two sisters. It was the moment a decade of silence cracked open. If you've ever felt something boiling under your skin, the kind of anger you've had to bury just to survive, stay with me. This is the part where everything starts to shift. Do you want to continue? I grew up in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a bodega that smelled like frying oil and warm beer. The walls were so thin, you could hear every argument, every laugh, every slammed door from the units on both sides. But the loudest sounds were always inside our own home. Mom pacing the kitchen with a cigarette between her fingers. Dad coughing into the sink before yelling about bills. Lena and I sitting shoulder to shoulder at the scratched dining table sharing the same chipped plate of spaghetti. We were identical, but people never treated us that way. At dinner, Mom would scoop extra meatballs onto Lena's plate, pat her cheek, and tell her she was sweet like her aunt. She'd look at mine, shrug, and say, Mara doesn't need as much. Dad would lean back in his chair, lace his fingers behind his head, and say, Lena's the gentle one. Mara's something else. He'd smirk like it was a joke. But even at 8 years old, I felt it cut. I didn't know it then, but that tiny split the soft one, and the sharp one would become the crack. Everything later fell through. School wasn't much better. Lena floated through making friends with anyone who smiled at her. I was the shadow behind her, always watching. I remember one afternoon in 7th grade when a group of boys cornered her near the bike racks. They yanked her backpack off, dumped her notebooks onto the asphalt, and tugged her braid like she was a toy. Lena froze, tears filling her eyes, but too scared to rise. Scared. I didn't think. I just moved. My fist connected with the ringleader's jaw so hard my own knuckles stung for days. He dropped instantly, screaming like someone had stabbed him. Teachers swept in, grabbed me by the arm, dragged me into the principal's office. They asked what happened, but nobody asked Lena. They asked why I attacked him, but nobody asked why he had his hand in her hair. Dad showed up angry not at the boys, but at me. You can't just go around hitting people, Mara, he said. Why do you make everything harder? Lena stood behind him silently, and I swallowed the burn in my throat. But something changed that day. I realized protection came with a price one only I seemed to pay. I didn't know it then, but the world keeps receipts. Mine just took years to come. By the time we were 16, Lena started dating, and I started working odd jobs, late shifts, anything that kept me out of the apartment. But she was still my shadow, and I was still hers. One night, we stopped by a corner store for snacks. It was humid, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin. Lena walked ahead, humming something under her breath. We crossed the parking lot when a boy from school appeared drunk on cheap vodka and ego. He grabbed Lena by the hair so fast she didn't even scream at first. Just a breath caught in her throat. He dragged her toward the narrow alley between the laundromat and the market. Something inside me roared awake. I didn't think, I barely breathed. I grabbed a folding chair leaning against the wall and swung. I heard the snap before I saw him collapse. A sickening wet crack that vibrated through my bones. His scream followed sharp and high echoing down the alley. People rushed out. Someone called 911. Lena clung to me, shaking, saying my name over and over like a broken prayer. The police didn't care about the alley. They cared about the broken arm. They cared about the blood on the concrete. They cared about my face, my silence, my heartbeat still pounding too loud. They didn't care that I saved her. Reporters wrote about a violent teen girl. The school counselor said my fight response was pathological. The court-appointed psychiatrist used words like impulse dysregulation and emotional instability. Mom cried through the hearing. Dad smoked 3 cigarettes outside the courthouse, staring at the ground like he didn't know me, and Ridgeview State Hospital opened its doors. My first night inside the adolescent ward smelled like bleach and old mattresses. The room had a single metal bed, a bolted desk, and a window with bars thick enough to climb on. I remember running my fingertip along one of the bolts and thinking, this is permanent. Even if they say it isn't, it is. The days blurred. Wake up, line up for meds group therapy, bland oatmeal, in a plastic bowl, more meds, lights out. But I refused to fall apart. If they wanted me quiet, I'd get stronger instead. Push-ups until my arms shook. Pull-ups using the window bars, running in place. Sit-ups until sweat hit the floor. If I couldn't control where I was, I'd control what I became. I didn't know it back then, but those 10 years weren't just punishment. They were training. Then came the visits. Lena arrived the first month carrying a box of supermarket muffins, her hair in a loose ponytail, her eyes bright. She pressed her hand to the glass. I pressed mine back. She talked about everything schoolboys' dances she went to with borrowed dresses. I listened, storing each detail like it belonged to me. As months turned into years, something changed. She came less often. Her smiles thinned out, stretched tight. She didn't bring muffins. She brought questions. Do you ever feel trapped? Do you think people can change? I'd ask her what was wrong, and she'd say, nothing, with a smile that trembled. One winter, she showed up with a ring. It's not expensive, she said quickly. Tyrone bought it on sale. But he's good to me. He tries. Her voice sounded rehearsed. She laughed too loud. She didn't meet my eyes when I asked if she was sure. She said she was lucky anyone wanted her at all. That sentence lived under my skin like a splinter. The next visit, she came with a bruise on her wrist. She said she bumped into a shelf at work. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back too fast, and something inside me shifted like a fault line, cracking quietly. The year after that, she arrived with a baby photo. Ellie, 6 pounds 4 ounces. A tiny fist curled against Lena's chest, but Lena's smile was flat, her eyes dull. Tyrone's tired, she said. He doesn't really help, but it's okay. He works a lot. She didn't mention that he spent most nights losing money on sports betting. I only learned that later. Then the sleeves started. Long sleeves in August, high collars in July, makeup caked under her eyes, her body shrinking, her voice shrinking with it. I didn't know it then, but by the time she walked in wearing those sleeves, she wasn't just visiting me. She was signaling for help she didn't know how to ask for. And every time she left, I felt the walls close in a little tighter. Not because I was trapped in Ridgeview, but because she was trapped out there with no bars to warn the world that something dangerous lived inside that house. Time inside Ridgeview didn't blur. It got sharp. The squeak of the morning med cart. Keys at every door. Lights too white too early. Breakfast that smelled like wet cardboard. Doors locking, unlocking, locking again. I learned the schedule like a second language. Meds group yard, lights out. In between I trained. Push-ups beside my bed until my arms shook. Pull-ups on the window bars until my palms split. Sit-ups on the cold tile until my spine burned. 10 years of turning anger into muscle. Staff treated me like my file impulsive, dangerous bad judgment. I let them. Let them say Mara responds with aggression when she perceives threat, like some bruises were a misunderstanding. Then Dr. Amelia Price showed up. New psychiatrist. Tired eyes, sharp brain. First session, she closed my chart and looked at me. You haven't hit anyone in here for 8 years, she said. Why not? Because nobody dragged my sister into an alley, I answered. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. So your violence is targeted. My violence is loyal, I said. That's different. From then on, she talked to me like someone who exploded once for a reason, not a bomb that might go off any second. She pushed hard but fair. Breathing exercises, thought logs anger scales. I played along because it kept me from rusting inside, and because I needed someone in that building to believe I could be more than the worst thing I'd ever done. Years were measured by drafts under the door and cheap decorations on the common room wall. Winter stung through the window cracks. Summer glued the sheets to my back. Birthdays were marked by store cupcakes and off-key singing. When I turned 25, Lena came with a cake that said, "To the best sister," in shaky blue icing. She was thinner, her hair was pulled too tight. When she pushed up her sleeves to cut the cake, she yanked them down so fast the knife clinked. Hot in here, I asked. I'm fine, she said. Hospitals are always freezing. Her phone buzzed. She flinched. Who's that, I asked. Tyrone, he just worries, she answered. The call went to speaker by accident. His voice exploded into the room. Where are you? You know how long the bus is? I'm not watching that kid all day while you sit in there with the crazies. The nurse behind the glass looked up. Lena scrambled, took it off. Speaker whispered apologies. He hung up without saying goodbye. Stress, she muttered, eyes on the table. He gets like that. Stress doesn't sound like that, I said. You wouldn't get it, she snapped. You've been in here forever. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Maybe she was right. Maybe the world had moved on without me. On a December visit, she came in a red sweater that swallowed her shape, snow melting in her hair. She spread photos on the scratched plastic table. Ellie, in a thin Santa dress, beside a crooked mall tree, eyes too serious. Ellie half hiding behind Lena's leg, while the boy made a face at the camera. Who's the gremlin, I asked. Bryce, she said. Candace's boy. She lives with you now, just until she gets back on her feet. Her jaw tightened. That's what they say anyway. How long has just been? A while. Stories started spilling in fragments after that. Gloria dumping a whole pot of stew because it was too bland. Then making Lena cook again from scratch. Candace dropping her laundry in the hallway and yelling for Lena like she was staff. Bryce grabbing Ellie's doll, spitting in her plate, while his mother laughed. She's 5, Maralina whispered. And Ellie's 3. But they act like my kid is the problem. What does Tyrone do, I asked. Nothing. He says girls are dramatic. That I baby her. My hands curled under the table until my nails bit skin. I sat there in state pants and plastic sandals, memorizing every word. I didn't know it then, but each petty cruelty she described was a thread. One day I would pull all of them at once. The last quiet visit didn't look like much. No new bruise I could see. No split lip. Just a manila folder and a bag of cheap oranges. It was July. Heat pressed against the windows. The air conditioner wheezed. Lena came in late shoulders, hunched, eyes moving like she expected someone to follow. She set the oranges down, then slid the folder toward me with 2 fingers. What's this? I kept my voice flat. Nothing, she whispered. Just hold on to it. Lena, in case something happens, she added quickly. It's stupid. Tyrone says I exaggerate. Gloria says I bruise easy. Her laugh cracked. Inside were photocopied medical reports. Contusion, sprain, fracture. The words were clinical, but I saw Lena in all of them. There were photos yellowing, bruises on ribs, purple fingerprints on arms, a swollen eye under bad concealer. At the bottom, a half-completed police report. Her handwriting filled the lines about what happened. The boxes for officer name and badge number were empty. You never turned this in, I said. She finally met my eyes. Something fierce and exhausted flickered there. I picked up the phone twice, she said. Both times I heard your story. She's emotional. She has a record. She overreacts. They wouldn't see what he did. They'd see me. They'd see you. The truth of that sat heavy between us. When a girl with a diagnosis says she's being hurt, people tilt their heads and ask about her meds. I can't protect you from in here, I said. I know. Her fingers twisted her sleeve. That's why I'm giving you this. If I disappear, at least someone will know I'm not crazy. I slid the folder under my palm like it was nothing. The nurse glanced over, saw 2 sisters talking, and went back to her clipboard. I'll keep it safe, I said. But you're not disappearing. We both heard the lie. That night in my room, I laid the papers out on the thin mattress. Report after report, date after date, a slow war mapped in ink. I read until I could recite every line with my eyes closed. Then I hid the folder behind a loose panel in the wall next to the only photo I still had of us, before Ridgeview, 2 12-year-olds sharing one cupcake. The hallway lights dimmed. Somewhere down the ward, a metal bed frame scraped and someone sobbed into the dark. Outside, a siren wailed thin through the glass, while the building hummed like an old fridge. I lay there, counting my heartbeat 1, 2, 3, forcing it to slow. I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside me, small but permanent. I didn't know it yet, but the next time Lena walked through that heavy door, she wouldn't be visiting an institutionalized sister. She would come with bruises she couldn't hide anymore, and I would not stay on my side of the glass. The day they transferred me out of Ridgeview for community reevaluation, the air outside felt too big, too loud, too bright. 10 years behind white walls made the world feel like it was vibrating. I stepped into the sun with a plastic bag of state-issued clothes and Lena's file pressed flat against my ribs. I was supposed to sign papers live with a supervisor, follow rules. Instead, an officer was waiting with a note from Lena. 5 words in her handwriting, jagged like she wrote while shaking. I can't do this anymore. I didn't go to my assigned housing. I went to her. The Holt house looked the same as every story she'd told me. Peeling paint, window blinds bent like someone grabbed them too hard. A tricycle tipped over in the yard. The doorbell didn't work, so I knocked. Lena opened the door with one eye half swollen shut. Mara. Her voice cracked like a kid. You can't be here. I'm exactly where I need to be. She stepped aside. The house smelled like old grease and cheap air freshener. Somewhere a TV blared sports commentary. Then Tyrone appeared in the hall, wiping his hands on his shirt like he owned the air we breathed. "Who's this?" he asked. My sister Lena whispered. His eyes flicked over me, the crazy one. I didn't blink. "The one who breaks bones." He laughed like he didn't believe me, then walked to the kitchen. "Lena makes something for Ellie." Ellie peeked from behind the couch when I entered the living room. Tiny. Thin. She lifted her arms, wanting to be held. I picked her up and felt every rib through her shirt. Her head tucked under my chin like she remembered me from the photos Lena had shown her. "Has she eaten today?" I asked. "Of course," Lena said too fast. Ellie shook her head against my shoulder. That was the first crack. Dinner that night was fish so salty, it felt like punishment. Gloria Holt watched from the head of the table, arms crossed like a warden. "You sit," she ordered when I hovered by Ellie. "We do things a certain way here." "I'll feed my niece," I said. "She doesn't need you confusing her," Gloria replied. "You Quinlan girls think you're special." Ellie reached for a piece of bread. Bryce Candace's boy smacked her hand and laughed. "Stop," I said. He smirked. "Make me." I leaned in until my face was level with his. "Try that again." He shrank back. Candace gasped. "Don't threaten my son." I stood. "Then teach your son not to hit toddlers." Gloria slammed a spoon onto the table. "In this family, we don't talk back." Then it's time someone started. Silence sucked the air out of the room. Lena stared down at her plate, shoulders shaking. After dinner, while the others argued in the kitchen, Ellie curled into my lap on the torn sofa. The TV flickered blue light over the bruises on Lena's arms. Tyrone shouted from the back room. Something crashed. Lena flinched hard. "You're leaving with me tomorrow," I said quietly. She shook her head violently. "No. If I try again, he'll take Ellie." "Not if he's gone." She froze. "Mara, don't. You'll end up back in Ridgeview." "I'm not killing him," I said. "I'm ending him." Before she could answer, Tyrone walked in. "Lena, get in here. Now." She stood too fast, nearly tripping. I grabbed her elbow. He noticed. "Let go of my wife." "I didn't. She's talking." He stepped closer, chest puffed the way cowards make themselves look bigger. "You think you're tough because you did a little time?" He sneered. "In this house, you follow my rules." "Funny," I said. "I didn't see your name on the mortgage papers." His jaw clicked. "Stay out of our marriage. You made it my business the second you touched her." He grabbed my arm. Big mistake. I twisted his wrist. Not enough to break. Enough to remind him. He yelped, stumbled back, clutching his hand. Gloria rushed in. "What did you do?" "What he's been doing it to Lena for years," I said. Only softer. They all looked at Lena. But she'd gone still, the kind of still you see in animals that have been hit too many times. Later that night, lying on the thin mattress in the spare room, I heard them whispering in the hallway. Tyrone's voice low. Gloria's sharp. Candace's shrill. "She's unstable," Gloria hissed. "We can get her removed." "Call Ridgeview," Candace whispered. "Say she's a danger." "We need her knocked out first," Tyrone said. "Then the hospital will take her." My heartbeat stayed steady. 10 years of training to keep it that way. I heard the pill bottle shake. I heard Gloria say, "Crush it into the soup. Give it to Ellie. She won't eat unless the sister feeds her." My blood iced. They were willing to drug a child just to take me out. I lay awake until the floorboards creaked back into silence. The plan was sloppy, desperate, but dangerous. I stared at the ceiling and felt the old Mara rise. The one they tried to sedate into oblivion. The one who only surfaced for Lena. I didn't know exactly how yet, but this was the moment I realized something undeniable. If I stayed quiet, Lena would die in this house. If I stayed calm, Ellie would grow up thinking violence was love. If I stayed passive, I might as well still be locked behind those white walls. This family wanted a monster to blame. I could give them exactly that, but on my terms. The next morning was too quiet. I woke up on the couch with Ellie's hair stuck to my arm and Gloria standing in the doorway in her faded robe, a smile pinned to her face. "I made breakfast," she said. "Thought we could start fresh." The table looked like a commercial, eggs, biscuits, a little bowl of chicken soup right in front of Ellie's chair. The soup smelled wrong. Under the chicken, there was a sharp, bitter note that didn't belong. Ellie's eyes lit up. Gloria hovered behind me. "Kids need real food," she said. "Put some meat on her bones." I lifted the spoon, blew on it, brought it toward Ellie's mouth. My hand slipped. The bowl tipped, hit the table, and dumped onto the floor broth and noodles, splashing all over Gloria's slippers. I jerked back like it was an accident. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It was hot." Gloria jumped away, cursing. For 1 second, the sweet mask ripped, and I saw pure hatred. "That was for your kid," she snapped. "I spent all morning on it." "Then you should eat it," I said quietly. "Can't waste food, right?" Tyrone watched, jaw tight. Gloria forced a laugh. No, that's okay." I scooped the pieces of chicken back into the bowl with a rag, set it on the table again, and slid it toward her. "You're always telling Lena not to waste anything," I said. "Please, show us." Her eyes flicked to the bowl, then to me. She took a tiny sip. Her face twitched before she swallowed. Too salty, too bitter, too laced. She knew that I knew. That was the second crack. Later, I took Ellie outside to the concrete courtyard. Rusted bikes leaned against the fence. She sat on the steps, lined up 3 pebbles, and named them her friends. The door next to us opened. Mrs. Delgado stepped out with a trash bag. "You must be Lena's sister," she said. "Yes, ma'am." She glanced at Ellie's skinny legs, the fading mark on her cheek. "I heard a lot last night." "Walls are thin," I said. "They've been thin for years." She lowered her voice. "I have some recordings. On my phone. Fights. The baby crying. In case something happened." I went very still. "Why?" "Because nobody listened when it was me," she said. "Maybe they'll listen if it's you." "If I needed those, I asked, would you give them to me? If it gets that little girl out of this building," she said. "Yes." That was our first ally. That afternoon, Tyrone came home early, reeking of sweat and beer. He dropped his keys, looked straight at me. "Come here," he said. "I'm right here," I answered. "I'm talking to my wife." "I'm the one you put your hands on," I said. "Talk to me." He stepped close. "You think I won't hit you because you did time?" "I think you know I'll hit back," I said. "And I won't stop at your wrist." His hand twitched. Gloria's voice cut in from the hall. "Enough. The neighbors can hear." She dragged him toward the kitchen. They thought they were whispering. They weren't. "She's dangerous," Gloria hissed. "We need her out before she turns that child against us." "She already did," Tyrone muttered. "Ellie won't even look at me." "Then we send her back," Gloria said. "Tonight." "We tie her call Ridgeview, tell them their crazy patient snapped. They'll be here in 10 minutes. I went to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. Ellie was napping, thumb in her mouth. In Ridgeview, they taught us how to restrain people without breaking them, how to move quicker than panic, how to use body weight instead of size. They never imagined we might need those skills out here. I slid my hand under the mattress and pulled out an old belt, tested a knot around the bedpost. Tight, fast. If they wanted a scene for the hospital, I'd give them one, just not the version they'd written. By midnight, the house had sunk into that heavy silence where bad decisions grow. The TV was off. The fridge hummed. I lay with Ellie, tucked under my arm, breathing slow, eyes half closed. One floorboard creaked in the hallway, then another. Then 3 shadows stopped outside my door. The knob turned inch by inch. For 10 years, I'd been the one strapped down, sedated, watched. Tonight, I wasn't the patient. I was the one holding the rope. The door opened just wide enough for 3 shadows to pour in. Tyrone first, breathing hard, one hand wrapped in gauze. Behind him, Gloria clutched a towel like a gag. Candace held duct tape and a length of rope. They moved with the clumsy confidence of predators who thought their prey was asleep. I didn't move. Ellie lay in the crook of my arm. Her lashes fluttered when the hallway light hit her face. I eased her pillow higher, shielding her eyes. "Sleep," I whispered. She didn't stir. Tyrone took a step forward. "Grab her arms," he muttered. Candace nodded, lifted the tape. I sat up. Not fast, not loud, just enough for all 3 of them to freeze. "What are you doing awake?" Tyrone hissed. I swung my legs over the bed. "What do you think?" He blinked. You were asleep. That's what you were counting on, right?" I stood careful not to wake the child. "Tie me up. Call Ridgeview. Tell them the crazy one snapped." Gloria stiffened. "We wouldn't save it." I took 1 step forward. "What's the plan?" "Drag me out in front of the neighbors. Dump me on a stretcher like trash." "You think they won't ask why my daughter's screaming?" "She's not your daughter," Candace spat. "She will be," I said. "Soon." Tyrone lunged. He always lunged, wide, slow, predictable. I slid sideways. His arm grazed my shoulder. My hand shot up, caught his wrist twisted. His knees buckled. A grunt punched out of his chest. Candace dropped the duct tape. What is she?" I shoved Tyrone backward onto the bed. The mattress caved under his weight. Before he could roll, I looped the belt around his wrist and yanked it through the bed frame slat. His other hand swung toward me. I dodged, grabbed his elbow, leaned my weight, and cuffed the second wrist down. He thrashed. "Let me go." "You first," I said. "Say please." Gloria screamed. "Stop it, he's hurt." He hurt everyone else first. I tightened the knot. "This is nothing." Candace fumbled for the towel. "Mom, get the rope now." I turned slowly. "Bring it here." Gloria froze. "You heard me," I said. "Bring it." Her eyes darted to the hall. "No. Then I'll come take it." I stepped toward her. She stumbled back, shoved the rope into my hands like it was burning her. I tied Tyrone's ankles so tight he couldn't even jerk. His breathing was ragged now, fear leaking through bravado. "Lena," he gasped, reaching for the name he thought belonged to me. "You don't want to do this." "That's where you're wrong," I said. "I've wanted to do this for a long time." Gloria shook her head. "You're crazy." "Maybe." I picked up the duct tape, but I'm not stupid. I peeled a strip slowly, the sound slicing the air. Tyrone's eyes went wide. Wait. I slapped the tape over his mouth. He thrashed again. The headboard crashed into the wall. Candace screamed, "He can't breathe." "He can," I said. "He just has to choose to." I reached for the lamp on the nightstand. Ceramic. Heavy. I smashed it on the floor at Gloria's feet. She shrieked. "Sit down," I said. "No." I raised the broken lamp base. She crumpled onto the bed edge. I dragged the chair from the corner, wedged it under the doorknob, locking us in. The room felt smaller now, air thick with sweat and panic. The single bulb hummed overhead. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's talk." Candace backed up until she hit the dresser. "Please don't hurt us." "That depends." I crouched beside Tyrone. "You three were going to tie me down, drug me. Call Ridgeview. Let them drag me back." Gloria swallowed hard. We only wanted peace." "You want peace," I leaned in close to Tyrone. "Then you start by telling the truth." His chest heaved. Sweat slid down his temple. "Let's start simple," I said, tearing another strip of tape. "Did you hit your wife?" He shook his head violently. "Wrong answer." I slammed the tape against the side of his face, not covering his mouth this time, just marking the lie. His eyes flamed. Candace whimpered, "Please." "Shut up," Gloria hissed. "She'll kill us if you talk." I smiled. "That's the smartest thing you've said all night." I grabbed Tyrone's jaw, forced him to look at me. "Nod or shake." "Did you hit Lena?" "A beat." His chest rose. He nodded. "Good." I let go. "Now, did you hit Ellie?" He shook his head instantly. I leaned close. "Try again." He hesitated. Sweat dripped off his chin. He nodded once. Candace sobbed. "Mom." I stood, turned to Gloria. "And you? Did you hold her down so he could choke her?" Gloria clutched her chest. I didn't." "That wasn't the question." Her lips trembled. Maybe I tried to stop them. I stepped closer. The floorboard creaked. "You tried to stop them by shoving a dirty sock in her mouth." Her face drained of color. "Thought I didn't know," I asked quietly. "Thought she'd never tell me." Gloria stared at the floor. She was screaming. The neighbors heard anyway. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone. "I have something to show you." Candace stiffened. "What?" I pressed play. Mrs. Delgado's recording filled the room. Screaming, crashing, a man yelling, a child crying. Gloria's voice shrill and unmistakable. "Beat that useless child." Gloria covered her mouth. Candace collapsed to her knees. "You're done," I said. "All of you." Tyrone thrashed the bed, rattling. "Save your strength," I said. "You'll need it later." I pulled the chair from under the doorknob, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. I didn't have to slam it. The silence behind me slammed itself. When I returned, I set my phone on the dresser and angled the camera. The red light blinked. I looked at all three of them, trembling in the dim yellow glow. "This," I said, "is the part where your story ends, and mine begins." The house felt too quiet after the screaming stopped. Not peaceful quiet. The kind that settles after a storm where everything looks still, but the air is tight and waiting to snap again. I left Tyrone tied to the bed and walked back into the living room. The walls hummed with leftover panic. My hands were steady, too steady. Ellie was asleep on the couch, curled like a kitten under a blanket. Even in dreams, she twitched at every sound. I brushed her hair off her forehead. "You're safe," I whispered. It felt like a promise carved into stone. I sat for a moment, letting my breathing slow. The rage was still there, pressed under my ribs like a hot coin, but I'd learned to hold it. 10 years teaches you how to sharpen anger into something useful. I pulled out the folder Lena had brought me the day she came to the hospital. Police report drafts she'd never filed, photos of bruises, doctor's notes she was too scared to turn in, and tucked between them a bank statement, Gloria's name, a secret account, the first hint of where the money came from. I flipped through the pages slowly. Every bruise, every fracture, every accidental fall, a map of 7 years of violence. It was all there, neat and undeniable. They thought they could break me tonight. But what they didn't understand was that they'd handed me the one thing I'd been missing: leverage. I stood and walked to the hallway. The bedroom door was cracked open, just enough for a sliver of light to cut across the floor. Candace and Gloria were inside whispering frantically. They still hadn't realized the camera was recording the entire beating. I could hear Gloria's voice low and shaking. "She tricked us," she hissed. "She tricked all of us." Candace sobbed softly. "What are we gonna do?" "Shut up," Gloria snapped. "If the police see that video—" "They will," I said, stepping inside. Both women froze. The fear in their eyes was almost enough to make me feel something. Almost. I held up the folder. 7 years of evidence, and now assault on top of it. Candace backed away. Please don't send us to jail." "That depends," I replied, "on whether you're smart enough to listen." Gloria's hands trembled. "What do you want?" I looked at her. This woman who'd starved Lena, hit her, held her down, taught her son to fear, taught her granddaughter to shrink. It's simple, I said. Your son signs the divorce papers. You hand over the money you've been hiding for years, and Ellie leaves this house forever. Gloria opened her mouth to argue. I didn't raise my voice, or I pressed play on this. I tapped my phone. The screen froze on the image of Gloria and Candace standing over Tyrone belts and sticks in hand. Gloria's face collapsed in on itself. Candace crumpled like wet paper. I'll give you time to think, I said, but not much. I walked back into the hallway, closed the door behind me, and exhaled. My hands still didn't shake. Not once. I looked at Ellie again. Curled, small, breathing soft. They thought they had destroyed me, I whispered, but they just handed me the one weapon I needed. The house stayed silent as I sat down beside her. Silent and waiting. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over. Because after everything that happened in that house, the bruises, the lies, the silence that nearly crushed us, what stayed with me most wasn't the anger. It was the quiet after. The sound of Ellie's breathing against my shoulder. The way Lena's hand stopped shaking when she realized no one could hurt her anymore. Freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in small pieces, in the steady truth that no one owns your life but you. I don't know what waits for us next. Maybe peace, maybe more battles. But for the first time in years, we're choosing our own path. And if you're listening to this right now, wherever you are, whatever you've survived, I want you to know something. You're allowed to start over too.